Thank you, PJ. It is time for another edition of the Pair and a Spare podcast. I'm Justin Gaard from The Fan. We've got Ryan Burns from Gopher Illustrated. And from the Star Tribune, the Minnesota Star Tribune, we have Chip Scoggins. It looks like we're recording this at night. No, we're recording this in the middle of a Minnesota thunderstorm. This is early morning, mid-morning, mid-morning on a Monday morning. And it's a great possibility my internet goes out halfway through and you guys are going to have to bring this one home. But how's everybody doing? How are we? Welcome back.
I mean, I'm just excited that maybe the news of the day is that Anthony Scoggins has a new microphone for the 2025 season.
Let's test it out. How do you sound, Chip?
How's it sound? Well, you know, it's like any good football team. You got to do a self-scout in the offseason. We took some time. We did some inventory on how things were. So, do you like the camera angle too? For people that are checking us out on YouTube,
watching on YouTube, yeah.
I'm not showing you my four chins anymore. Hopefully, it's a little better view. So, yeah, I got a microphone, and we're stepping the game up a little bit here.
I love it. Season 4 or 5 of this podcast, I don't know, but we're trying to get it. We've done 100 episodes, and now maybe we're getting closer to that audio perfection that every other podcast seems to have. Except ours.
We don't want to rush into anything.
We'll do our best. No, we want to leave room for growth. You know, you need to leave room for growth, I think. You don't want to be perfect too early because then the standard is the standard and you have to keep changing your best. And we don't have to do that. We are presented, as always, by our great friends at Jack's Cafe. You can see on the bottom of the YouTube page, jackscafe.com, jaxcafe.com, if you want to make some reservations. And a little bit later in the show, we'll tell you about something great that Jax has for the Pair and a Spare audience that Bill has put together for the next week or so. So we're going to give you some details on that as we go. But why are we back right now, last week of July? Because it's football season. Burnsy and I are heading to Vegas in a matter of hours, and we've got Vikings training. Well, I'm tomorrow. I don't know when Burnsy is. We'll talk about that. Vikings training camp opens up this week. I'll be out there on the radio show with the Perch on Thursday. Kevin O'Connell's going to join Dan Barrero, but we're here, guys. It seems like we just blinked, but it is now football season, apparently. How are we feeling about that? Summer's
over. When I was on the beat, July 4th was kind of the end of my summer. And I know people probably hate to hear that because there's a lot more summer left. But when you cover football, it's almost like after the 4th of July, you start ramping up for camp, right? And you have media days and all those things. So I'm happy. I'll still enjoy summer, but I'm glad camp's here. And it was fun to get out to the Gophers Media Day last week. And what do we have, Burnsy? 20-something guys? And Guards, you're there on the radio the whole thing. That was cool. I caught some of those interviews. But
Thank you.
It's good to kind of put some faces with names from new guys. There are a lot of them.
Yeah, I know it's football season when Chip's calling me saying, just asking different questions about all the new faces. And I understand that there's a lot of new faces and it takes me a lot of time. I think the worst day is always the first day of spring or the first fall practice I see because all the numbers are different.
Yeah.
And you're looking out there saying, nope, that's not him anymore and trying to figure all that out. But yeah, between media days last week, of which Guardsy, I'll tell you, a lot of great feedback on Gopher Illustrated about your interviews with Grimmer and about all the different players that people are getting to know, their first taste of Drake Lindsey. Chipper mentioned it. We got 20-something guys at the internal media day. As you said, we head off to Vegas here very shortly. I'm going to have to drag you off the Baccarat tables at about 4:30 a.m. on Wednesday, but I already know that going in now. This isn't my first time in Vegas with you, which I think I'm going to speak on behalf of every listener in the audience when I ask you this, Guardsy.
Yeah.
This is the first year we're not in Indy. How do you feel? How do you feel in a while? I'll say that because I remember back in the Chicago. Sure.
Chicago, yeah.
How dare they take it out of your favorite town?
Thank God. That's my reaction. Thank God that anywhere different, anywhere is fine. And now they're coming off the glow of the WNBA All-Star game. They had a big post about that, and there were even like local TV people like, and people, as you guys know, send me this stuff. I don't even go looking for the indie stuff anymore. It just gets sent to me.
Yep.
And trust me, I'm sure we're probably going to be back there next year on the Astro turf of, there's a dated reference, on the field turf of Lucas Oil Stadium again, hearing everybody talk about St. Elmo's and the shrimp cocktail, which again is lovely. But I'm willing to bet, speaking of Vegas, if I want to find shrimp cocktail this week, Burnsy, I'm willing to bet I can find it. Whether it's made by Bobby Flay, Emerald Lagasse, Gordon Ramsay, or any number of celebrity chefs, I'm willing to bet I can find it. But I am excited to try something different. You know what I love? The reaction when I've been telling people, just not in my sports life, where I'm going. And I'll say, I'm going to Vegas. And they're like, oh, what's there? I'm like, Big Ten Football Media Day. Like, why is it in Vegas? Because it's 2025, baby. And they've got 4 West Coast teams that they need to appease. You don't need to make USC keep coming to the cornfields. It's fine going out there. So I can't wait. I'm excited. Because I'm excited to see what the setup is, Burnsy. We're going to be in basically ballrooms at the Mandalay Bay is what it sounds like. Yep. And so, which is right next to Allegiant Stadium. I'm just, because it's going to be totally different than just the usual. There's going to be some type of Vegas flair with it because that's just how it goes. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited. I'm very interested. Now, I'm only going to be there for like 36 hours. I'm parachuting in on Tuesday and leaving on a red-eye Wednesday night because I got to get back for work on Thursday. Grim left like 2 weeks ago. He's just staying there, and because we know
Grim experience with anything media days related.
Yeah, he's got nothing to do, so I think he's heading out actually today, and so he'll be there for the full gamut. But yeah, we'll pour one out for Indy. We'll pour out a very expensive drink in Vegas for Indy, but trust me, I'm sure we'll be back there because as we know and as they tell us, there's no place to host an event like Indianapolis. And if you want to wait in a regular, non-clear TSA line, you can do it at Indy. If you want to go to one of 2 terminals at their airport, you can do it in Indy. If you want to go to one of 2 restaurants after security, you can do it in Indy. But I'm willing to roll the dice and see what Vegas has in store for us.
Chipper, I don't even have to put a quarter in him anymore. I just, you say something and you let him go for 5 minutes, and I love that the bit is the bit.
That's it.
I've been loading up. Yeah, I missed you guys. It's been a while. It's been a while. So we got a lot to discuss. We got a lot to talk about. And let's start. We'll go local, and then we'll go Big Ten at the end because University of Minnesota has been in the news quite a bit, including in the Minnesota Star Tribune. Because the times they are a-changing, obviously. We're kind of in the rev share bit at the moment. Every school is doing the 20.5. We've talked a lot about that the last year or so, endlessly. Now, the two-pronged topic is that for the first time in a non-COVID year, the University of Minnesota Athletics Department is projecting a deficit of, about $9 million, I think. It kind of started at 8. Now we're going 9. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, guess what? They're planning to pay the players now, which they've never had to do in the history of any collegiate sport, legally at least, at the University of Minnesota. And coupled with that, one of the ways they're trying to get more money for the first time, implementing a student fee of $200 a year, $100 per semester for every student at the University of Minnesota to help pay for whatever you want to say, whether it's paying the players, whether it's facilities, whether it's the athletics department. The students that have nothing to do with sports, except maybe they go to a game every once in a while, are going to foot the bill of at least $200. They become one of 6 Big Ten schools that has implemented this, according to the Star Tribune article I read, which is my research. But take it away however you want here, Burnsy, on the deficit part of it, on the student fee part of it. I know I've got my thoughts that we'll get to, but it's been in the news here the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's fascinating to kind of see the amount of outrage. I knew it's never a popular thing, and you're always going to run into things like this with even such as a $200 fee. Now, I know there's tens of thousands of students, but I don't think people fully grasp how different it is here at the University of Minnesota in a couple different angles. Number one, the fact that Minnesota chooses, whether that's with their board of regents, whether that's the way the president's philosophy is, whether that's what Mark Hoyle is told. I think all of it is true. To run a balanced budget, which is not something that places like, say, UCLA or Rutgers have to do in a given year. Now, because they choose to do that and because they choose to try to keep up with the times here, this is what you have to do. And now, why do I say that? Because one of the places where Minnesota significantly lags behind is donations to the athletic department plus in ticket sales. Now, I looked at the most recent couple of years of fiscal year data that was available to us. I think it's fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 23. But I looked at it through the lens of those are the 2 areas in my mind, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, where fans can truly put their money where their mouth is, with showing up to games or giving to the athletic department. And I looked at it through the lens of also comparing it to Wisconsin and Iowa. Now, you can pick and choose who you think they should be compared to, but
Yep.
I'll just pick the two biggest rivals in that aspect. So Minnesota, in the latest fiscal year of data with that, did about $48 million in terms of donations into the athletic department and athletic ticket sales. Iowa did 72.5 million and Wisconsin did 79. So if you're looking for how do they compare, that's 24 million less than Iowa, and that is 31 million less than Wisconsin. And then if you look at another year back, it gets even worse for them, where they're about 29, 30 million behind Iowa and about 38 million behind Wisconsin. So you're expecting them to compete with those two biggest rivals every year, yet I think, as Mark Hoyle presented to the Board of Regents, their projected budget is, what is it, 14th or 15th in the Big Ten out of the 18 Big Ten teams?
That's what we
They
hear.
They only can spend the money that they have because they choose to run a balanced budget, but because they're so far behind on both donations and ticket sales, and I know some listeners will say, well, what do you expect? The basketball team's been bad. It's, even if they do fill the barn, what's that? An additional $2 million? Maybe. I think that's very generous for something like that. It's just kind of the reality of, if you're not going to be very good at getting donations into the athletic department, which this could be a whole podcast by itself. And I don't think it's a Mark Coyle specific issue for being the athletic director. I think you can go back 25 years and you guys can tell me that they have struggled to get significant donations of 6, 7, and 8 figures into the athletic department.
Yep.
But this is the way that Coyle has to try and generate some money. And I believe it. What would they do with the $200? I think they projected like $7 million then would come in.
Yeah, $7 million.
Again, I'm open to ideas, but the crux of this is, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. But if you want Minnesota to keep up with the times, like, to me, this is outside of trying to find more money, which everybody is always trying to do at this university. I know it's a difficult kind of thing to cross, Chip.
Yeah, and you take that $7 million and there's still $9 million short.
Right.
So basically you're $16 million without this student fee. And you're right, this goes back to, they lost probably a generation of fans.
20, 25 years, I would say.
And this is not a new thing that they've been dealing with. Now, there's some practical things. You have a 50,000 seat football stadium. Other schools have 75,000 at their feet.
Yep.
100,000.
And they fill them.
And
they fill them. That's the other part. Historically, they fill them.
Not only is that people in the stadiums, concessions, parking, all those things, tailgate fees that you pay. So you're already at a deficit there because of the size of your stadium, and the fan base that you're getting donations from. And I think I believe I heard this right. I think I am that in the presentation to the board they said that their fundraising is down. I think because people are choosing between giving it to the collective Dinkytown athletes or giving it to the school, and so you have
the other part.
They're making their choice there. I understand completely the blowback on the student fees. It comes at the time of a tuition hike of 7%?
Yeah. Yep.
And as a parent who is paying for 3 colleges, I can just tell you how hard that is. I mean, me and my wife we've saved, we compromised, we sacrificed, we've done everything so our kids aren't saddled with debt coming out of school. And I can tell you, this has been, we're putting 3 through college, and more than a few of these gray hairs on my head are the result of, worrying about how you're going to make it happen. So if you come to me and say, hey, okay, and if I have no interest in sports, or maybe even if I do have interest in sports, here's another fee that you're going to have to pay on top of that, I completely understand people saying this is out of control, this money, the spending. And I go back to the AD, and I think it was Trev Alberts who said college sports doesn't have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem. And I completely agree with that. And that's another whole episode of, in the past 15 years, the arms race just spun out of control, and everybody spent to keep pace, because you're always chasing someone, you're always chasing, your rival. So it became a spending problem. This money came in, this TV media rights distribution came cascading in, and everybody said, oh, wow, let's spend it because we need another strength coach. We need another this. We need another that. And all of a sudden, then this big expense comes, $28 million, and everybody's like, uh-oh.
Yep.
What do we do
Yep.
now? Let's put someone to students. Let's do this. Let's cut out 10 staff, positions from our department. Let's get rid of people. Let's cut sports. Let's whatever. So there's a spending problem. So I see both. It's not just a black and white argument. There's so many different tentacles to this. I understand why fans and parents would be mad about the fee. I understand where Mark Cole's probably, nervous. Should be. I mean,
I'm sure he doesn't want to implement, but the
Correct.
reality is kind of the reality, especially when they've chosen to prioritize, say,
If-
non-revenue sports, where they have a brand new gymnastics facility. Track and field just got taken care of. You've got a baseball field. You've got a softball field that are, I think, in pretty good shape. Like, if you're going to prioritize the non-rev sports, and you're already, in my opinion, running football about as lean as you can, if you just look at profit margin compared to what it was even 3 years ago, there's only so many options that you have left to take. If at the bottom of, to your guys' point, like, you have a 50,000 seat stadium compared to Camp Randall, compared to Kinnick. And if you're going to lack behind there in ticket sales, and you're also going to compound on that with donations being around the $24-25 million mark, which, to give again comparison, you had Wisconsin at $42 million last year, and you had Iowa at $41 million.
How small is your desk that you need like an auxiliary desk over there? How small for people on YouTube? Burnsy basically just did a 180 to look at his number. Is that the only workspace you're allowed in your wife's house? That little corner?
See, the other room currently has, so we have 2 bedrooms upstairs. One we've converted to my office. The other one currently has 6 kittens and their mom in it.
Oh my goodness!
I have 10 cats in my house plus a 160-pound mastiff. So
that's a whole other podcast. So this podcast isn't big enough for your office. You have to. This is your recording studio. You have both. Is that a tax situation? Are you writing off both rooms?
He's writing that off. He is.
You're writing off both rooms.
I take a fair and reasonable salary, Mr. IRS agent. Okay, I want you to know that.
Mark Cole told me, he's like, hey, being in a Big Ten, we have to look at it as a blessing, not a burden. And I get that, because you're getting, other than the SEC, you're getting more media rights distribution than the other conferences. But even within that, there's a big discrepancy about what you're taking in revenue and the people that you're competing against. And you're operating knowing you've committed to, you have to spend to that cap. You just have to.
Yep.
I mean, if you're going to compete and say you're on par with your peers in terms of that, you have to do it. But they're doing it with what you say the numbers were, Burnsy, right off the bat, you're 30 million behind.
They're 25, 30 million behind. And the other thing I would note here before I kick it over to Guardsy is they struggle in donations. I've made that very clear. But other schools like UCLA and Rutgers also do. The thing that they get the benefit of is, I think, UCLA, your boy, Martin Jarman out there, took $30 million in terms of government support to fund the athletic department last year. Minnesota doesn't have that luxury. Rutgers, which has run at a deficit for so long. Kirk Shiraka is one of the highest paid offensive coordinators because of it in the country. They take, I think, 17 million in the last fiscal year from taxpayer money. Minnesota doesn't have that luxury. So I'm not telling you there's a perfect way to do this. I mean, it's just, I get why it is. I get why parents would be upset, such as Chip, when they hear about the tuition hike on top of this $200 fee. It's just, it's not perfect, Guardsy.
No, go ahead, Chip.
My last thought is, where's this going? Like 5 years from now, how's this going to, is this sustainable? Is this, I mean, I guess the money, the TV money will keep going up and up. So that is part of it, but it just feels like, not hanging by a thread, because that's probably too overly dramatic, but I just wonder 5 years from now, what is this going to look like? Yeah.
Well, and it's always, I was just talking with someone earlier in the week at a Dinkytown Athletes event, which was awesome, by the way. I might spend a few minutes on it. said for the last couple of years, we've always said, let's get through the next couple of years and see. Like, it just keeps going down the road. Like, we're going to get some clarity in the next few years. Well, it's been a few years. We still have no idea what it's going to look like in the next few years. And so, because when this media rights deal popped, when Kevin Warren was the commissioner, this was before the House settlement stuff, right? And so everyone's thinking, man, these schools are going to be great. Everything's looking good. And then, bang, you know that $80 million you're going to get? Well, 20 and a half has to go right back to the student. Like, things change so quickly just in like thank God they have the new media rights deal now, right? If you're a Big Ten school, because you actually can fund it and you can theoretically. On the spending thing, one quick story, because it shows you how quickly money gets spent in college sports. I remember it must have been 10 years ago. Norwood Teague was still the athletic director. We were on one of those Gopher coaches caravans. And there had just been some type of, I don't know if it was an increase in TV or something, but I want to say it was like $6 or $8 million. Like, it was a big story. Like, hey, this money's coming in. You're going to get it. It wasn't the huge exponential money that we're seeing now. And on one of the stops, Norwood was on the bus, and there was a bunch of coaches on it. I don't even remember who they were, but he kind of did a Q&A. It was almost like a staff meeting that I was just sitting in. And somebody asked, what are the plans for the $6 million that we're getting? And he just kind of sat there and he's like, well, that money's kind of already been spent. Like, they hadn't even gotten it yet, but it was already going to something, yeah. And nothing frivolous. Like, I'm not like, but I'm just giving you
or something.
Yeah, it was going to something. They were in the college sports shell game. Like, publicly, it looks like, hey, we're getting this influx of cash, where in the athletic department, they're going, thank God, because we have to pay for this, and this. Like, and the bus was just kind of like, okay. But that to me is just a little example of like money in, money out. Like, it is such a random shell game. And you said it, Burnsy. Like, my reaction to the other thing we got to factor in on this deficit is he fired Ben Johnson. Like, and I remember on one of the football pregame shows when we were talking about this money, Coyle talked about how, because it is going to get tight because of the athlete part of it, he doesn't think you're going to see the crazy buyouts that we've seen. The Jimbo Fishers, the Gus Malzahns. Like, now at some places,
new Fleck buyout numbers here too.
Like, he just said, I don't think people can do that. Like, how many? Nebraska's still got like $50 million in dead money between like basketball and football, right? And that number is probably high, but you get my point. They fired Scott Frost. And when you do that and you just bang out whatever it was between $2 and $3 million, like, that's a one-time thing. Like, where you said, Chip, where's this going? My reaction is they've always had a balanced budget. That is from the top down. Like, they are obsessed with it, probably to their detriment, right? If you're really trying to do the college sports thing, like a lot of other people do the college sports thing. We talked about it on this podcast, Gene Smith saying, yeah, we ran $30 million under budget, but we wanted to be good at football in my last year. So new guy, clean it up. Yeah. And they had ways, right? 2 extra football games. They're going to get donations. They won the national championship. I'm sure that's helped. But like, they've always been obsessed with making it, dollars in, dollars out, net zero. Now in this new time, like, it's probably not going to work out this year. Like the student fee thing, of course they didn't want to do that. Like, no athletic department wants to just bang students for an extra $200. But I guess my point is, if 5 years from now we're still doing this, that's probably going to be a problem. But in the short term, like, this is such an isolated incident for the U that I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt a little bit on doing it the way they've always done it. Like, for people that are going, can't believe it, it's out of control. I mean, and honestly, this might sound silly. $9 million deficit for an athletic department budget doesn't seem that much to me when we've talked about some of the other ones over the years. And obviously they have to, if they're going to be who they've always been, they got to figure out a way to do it differently in future years here. But for this year, this was unfortunately where they are right now.
Well, especially as you look forward here and project forward, we haven't even talked about the big elephant in the room, which is everybody's other favorite talking point with the University of Minnesota athletics. They got to do something with Williams Arena in the next 5 years.
Well, that thing just went away. I mean, the rhetoric. So, like, you remember 2 years ago? I mean, they have the firm. Coyle's talking about it. We talked about it a lot. And they were gung ho about it. That changed completely with this. Basically, now all of a sudden, Coyle says, "Hey, when it's full, nobody cares about how old it is." Like, he was he's not wrong, by the way, but he wasn't saying that 18 months ago or 2 years ago. So that has completely changed, which I understand because right now is probably not the time to.
It isn't the time, but it's just there's so many different things where it just comes down to they have to find ways. Like, and this has been the struggle for 25, 30 years, whoever the athletic director is. They've got to find a way to find more money from Fortune 500s or just giant donors. But we've been saying that since the T. Denny Sanford days.
Well, that's what I was going to say. People always point to that. They point to the Friday night Michigan loss as the worst loss in Gopher history. The worst loss in Gopher history was T. Denny Sanford when they lost him because for whatever the reason.
I can't wait for the Chip Scoggins story in a book one day about the T. Denny Sanford and Jerry Kill athletic facilities story that I know that the three of us have heard.
Well, it predates Jerry Kill. I mean, it goes back to Huntington Bank Stadium. I mean, you can just if you want to know how important Sanford is, just go to any Dakota and look around. You don't have to drive too many mile markers to find his name on something.
I don't know if you guys remember the press conference we had with the band and President Brunix and all that it was T. Denny was going to be the lead donor on the stadium, and then
I sure do.
Went away. But
he's got the Hall of Fame building in there.
That's the thing. You look across town where St. Thomas is getting these big, a couple, maybe more than a couple that are given the really big checks.
The Andersons. Everybody knows their name, right? The Andersons.
Yeah, they need that, and it's fundraising needs to be better. I mean, they're clearly you don't make that coaching change in basketball if you don't think there's revenue that's not being captured. I mean, they need to create more revenue out of basketball. They just absolutely do. And I don't know, Burns, you threw out $2 million, might be more. I don't know, because it's not just ticket sales. That's donations. Then that's signage. It's Learfield. It's all the different things, that you can get. But they have to squeeze more. In today's, I mean, if it isn't crystal clear by the first however long we've been on here, in modern athletics, major college athletics, you need to make a lot of money in football and men's basketball. You absolutely do. You need to be able to squeeze as much out of it as you can. I think football is getting there. I think there's still, more to be done there, but they absolutely have to make more off men's basketball.
Anything else on this topic you guys want to tackle? It's been an interesting couple of weeks for sure, because there's a lot of explaining, but I get it. I get all of it. Like it is what, like, I agree with everybody. I understand why the U has to do all this. I understand why people might be pissed. That nobody's right or wrong. It's just kind of the reality of the situation. And again, if we're talking about this in 5 years and they're still, because I guess what I would say, guys, I don't believe that, Mark Coyle's, this wild West cowboy with the budget. You know what I mean? Right. Like I think we all agree on that, right? Like, I don't think he's going in and going, what's it cost? Don't care. I don't think he's eating at restaurants where they don't list the price. For the athletic department, I think it's a tough situation right now because of, and that sounds crazy when you think about the money that we all see, but when you throw in 20.5 that's now going to the players that nobody was counting on, and all the numbers that Burnsy just laid out, and it's a tricky situation to navigate at this point, but that's why those guys are getting paid the big bucks to figure it out here in the next couple of years.
And the athletes are getting that money right now in July. I mean, when I talked to Mark Cole at one point, he thought that he didn't know the pay schedule, but they'll get paid like once a month. So there's some athletes on the campus that are pretty happy right now with July.
No kidding.
Coming in,
No kidding. Get the PayPal app, the official pay provider of the Big Ten Conference. Speaking of money. And by the way, they're trying to find a naming rights deal. I bet we're probably not that far off. I know Wisconsin's got Culver's on the court, coming up. We've had Cub Foods and Cambria and all those things. We're probably not that far off from jersey patches, boys. We're probably not that far off. I mean, that's what all the professional teams are doing, right?
You have to be creative. I mean, you have to try to, Mark talked about they're having Farm Aid and they're having the World Juniors and they're, they had the Beyonce concert. Was it last year or 2 years ago? I mean,
2 years ago.
They have to, as he said, the traditional ways of fundraising is not going to be enough. They've got to, You got to put a naming rights on Williams Arena. It's going to be the barn at something because you have to be able to find more revenue.
But it's even with those types of things, it's like, okay, we'll get an extra $1 million here and an extra $1 million there. I'd also say if you're also trying to find ways to get that budget balanced, I think the best thing that could happen to this university is Gaardsy's team, the Fighting Don Plitzowitz. They go from being $4 million in the red to if they're good. And women's basketball, I think, is arguably is the sport that has the greatest potential for exponential growth, of which I think we've seen here.
Agree.
In the last 12, 24 months. Again, Gaardsy, you're much more closer to it than I am. But if they can start to make some headway at turning that red number into even neutral, that would go a long way for Coyle too.
Well, you think about softball, volleyball, women's basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Those three have kind of exploded together, and we're going to see it, with the NCAA tournament, just the women, not being a part of, it used to be they were all just thrown into the same NCAA TV deal, and now they're breaking off a little bit. Softball gets huge ratings, volleyball gets huge ratings, women's basketball gets huge ratings, and even being, going around all the Big Ten arenas, we all know Caitlin Clark has skyrocketed this thing, right? The rocket ship, totally true. But in the Big Ten, even in my 5 years, I guess this will be my 5th year. In my 4 years, watching other arenas go from a couple thousand fans to the Breslin Center at Michigan State had 10,000 fans at the last weekend because they've gotten pretty good. They've been in the tournament. On a Sunday afternoon in East Lansing, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't been there in a few years. This is it is different. All of them, and I think the Gophers are going to be good this year. And so that plays, I think that is coming, Burnsy, to answer your question, because it's happened all over the country, not just in Iowa City. It's happened all over the country in terms of attendance. Illinois, very good. Michigan has gotten better. All these schools, UCLA, USC, those places are packed for women's hoops. So I don't know why it would be any different here in a place that historically, when the team has been good, has really jumped on and supported. So you're right. That's another place. And every $4 to $5 million adds up as you go along, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes, Burnsy. All right, let's pause here real quick because our buddies at Jack's Cafe have hooked us up. And I would say hooked up the audience. And we wanted to do this last week, but because we're all so busy and we're very important, wait for the pause. We couldn't do the pause, but Jack's Cafe wants to give a little back to the Parent of Spare audience this week. If you go to jackscafe.com and make a reservation in the online portal, which is very easy to do, and you mention Parent of Spare promo, you will get 20% off the total of your food bill. Not the rum runners that Burnsy likes to get, but your food bill, you will get 20% off if you go to jaxcafe.com. If you can't listen to me and you're watching on YouTube, it's right there for you. jaxcafe.com on the bottom of the scroll. In the reservation area, in the little box, you put Parent of Spare promo. And if you want to do it by phone, same deal. You just say, I want the Parent of Spare promo. What's the Parent of Spare promo? 20% off your food bill this week. How does that sound, Ryan Burns?
That sounds elite, considering my mouth is starting to water thinking about the steak, maybe a little pan-crusted walleye. Again, I know Chip is very particular to some other certain things, but that sounds like a heck of a deal, Chipper.
I want you to get the creme brulee, get a great steak. Their salads are outstanding too, though. Remember we had the salad when we went there for lunch? That was outstanding.
Yes, of course I remember the salad. Yes,
Look,
I remember
I know,
all of it.
I don't eat salads, Chip, but I can approve of that salad.
Mix in a salad, Burnsy salad, but get the creme brulee. You won't be disappointed. And how about Bill? This is year 4 with us with Bill, and
I think so.
Yeah, he wants to kick it off in a cool way. 20% off your food bill. Come on.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Take your family or your wife or your spouse out for a late. Is this not late summer? Is it? Is it midsummer?
I'd say it's midsummer right now.
It feels like late summer to me because football, but for a midsummer nice night out.
Yeah, and what I love about Bill is he just tells us what he wants to do. He goes, hey, let's do this for the Parent of Spare audience. We don't go to him. Bill thinks about you guys way more than we think about you. I think that's the moral. Maybe we should do some self-scouting on that. But Bill is always the one that says, what do you guys think of this? Can we do this for the Parent of Spare crowd? I love when people come in and tell me they've heard you on the Parent of Spare crowd. How do we reward the Parent of Spare audience? This is all Bill, right, Chip? He emailed both 100%. Of us.
Yeah,
and he just said, I want to do this. Let's do it. Let's do it for a week. Go to jackscafe.com, mention the Parent Despair promo, call Jack's Cafe, mention the Parent Despair promo, 20% off. Like, that's Bill. That's Jack's. That's why it's the best. So anyway, let's get it done. Let's flood that place this week.
This weekend, yeah. Let's go late this week. Let's see a lot of people go there and then send us pictures. Tag us on it.
Please. jackscafe.com, jaxcafe.com. All right, we mentioned the local media day. We're going to Vegas for the Big Ten media day a little bit later this week. The local media day, one of Burnsy's favorite days, stand for 4.5 hours to talk to 27 different Gophers one time, and then basically just get to the regular season with all of that content. It's one of Burnsy's favorite days. He's very grateful, I know, for the opportunity to cover the program. What were the headlines? What were the headlines from the Gopher Media Day? I've got a couple, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start. It's the first time I really talked to Drake Lindsey. I was really impressed with his maturity and kind of his presence. You can tell he's grown up under the spotlight as a big-time quarterback, right? You just, those guys are used to being interviewed. They're used to kind of facing, questions. But it was a nice chat. We had, 10 minutes, 15 minutes with him. They let us go a little longer. And I just thought he had a good presence about him. It was interesting that, he was saying, I found this interesting that Max is more of an introvert around guys, very studious, very, obviously we've talked about it a lot, his kind of the way he prepares, but was more an introvert where Drake is more an extrovert. He's more, as someone said, he, wears his emotions on his sleeve. But Drake had admitted in the winter workout starting in January that he found himself almost trying to be Max the way he approached it. And then he learned, like, I got to be who I am. I got to be the leader that I am. I got to kind of have my own personality. So I found that interesting that he kind of recognized that himself and maybe pivoted or just felt more comfortable in his own skin. But I'm really curious to see him in action. He's certainly a big kid. I mean, when you see him physically, I mean, he's all of 6'4", 6'5". I don't know what they list him at, but so I'm excited for that. And it was just interesting. I texted Burns. Maybe this is just me being old and, my mind's not as good as it used to be, and maybe it's the portal era. There's just so many new names every year, and college rosters are so big anyway, unlike the Vikings. But there's just a lot of new names that you have to and faces that you have to get familiar with as you start the season.
Yeah, so blessed and highly favored. Just want to get that right off the bat here for anybody listening over at the University of Minnesota to be able to cover such an exclusive program. I'm working on paging my best.
My goodness. Are you bringing that salt to Vegas? Wow. Are you going to season your steak with that salt? By the way, my favorite thing to do is talk to other media members about how bitter Burnsy gets about, not knowing when practice is, because he doesn't hide it at all. And so I just love to – I know this will shock everybody. I like to stir the pot a little bit, including with Burnsy on the Gopher message boards at gopherillustrated.com. I did like to do that earlier in the week. But anyway, go ahead. I
mean, I've written, I think, 10-plus stories already from that event. So we're trying to get as much content.
You're welcome. You're welcome for the clicks.
Yeah, as we possibly can about a lot of new faces. But I think to Chip's point about Drake, I just don't remember being 19 years old and having that type of maturity, to be that kind of reflective, to know that as a redshirt freshman, especially, that I'm trying to follow a guy who is a 6-year senior, and I can figure out within a couple of weeks of winter workouts that I have to be me. I know Max worked here and his personality worked, but if I'm going to be the guy for the next 3-4 years, I have to be me. And that's a tough thing to try and follow in terms of the Max Brosmer footsteps. But I think he was incredibly introspective in that regard. Now, is that going to translate into outstanding performance? I have no idea. I mean, I think he's very gifted. I think he's very smart. I think he's got a great processor. But I think we all can kind of, as we get closer and closer to the season here, and I think we're about 7 weeks away now, I think trying to figure out what are realistic expectations for the offense, for Drake Lindsey, for a completely revamped offensive line is one of the things that's going to determine what this season is. Now, I don't know what those expectations are going to be, but I would just say, I know that I've said this all off season, and it's one of the questions I get constantly is from fans. It's, well, I heard the same thing with Ethan Kaliak-Manis, and look what happened.
Right.
I would just tell you, I know that they're both tall kids, and Drake's 6'5", and he's got a great arm. I would just tell you the things that Harbaugh, Minnesota's offensive coordinator, Greg Harbaugh, trusts him to do at the line of scrimmage compared to what he trusted Ethan to do in his first season when Harbaugh was a first-year offensive coordinator. They are in completely different stratospheres. Now, if that translates, that's great. But we also got to be realistic about a redshirt freshman starting for the first time in the Big Ten in this completely new world of a Big Ten. Now, the runway is a lot easier, I would say, considering it's Buffalo, Northwestern State, and then Cal before the bye week to prepare for my favorite week of the year, Revenge Week, between Greg Schiano and PJ Fleck Part 2, of which we'll get into. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. We're going to get into a little bit of a stroll down narrative street just yet.
Oh, boy.
But yeah,
I'm gonna ask PJ how much Greg Schiano meant to him every day that week.
That's right.
And I can't wait for him.
I'm sure
to
he's
do like
not
he
sick
did
of
last
talking
year
about it
and not even talk about it, which I think is just
Yeah.
an insane decision on
Well,
every level. But that's
the
here
one
nor
thing-
there.
The
So
one thing
it's
we talk
it's exciting to kind of get to see, and this will be one of my questions for Fleck at Big Ten Media Days. Like, this is such a completely different team than last year because you lost Daniel Jackson, Elijah Spencer, Max Brosmer, Ariane Terrestry, down the line, Justin Wally. Like, this is a completely different team. Like, what do you think the identity of this team is? Because it's so much different than
No
it was
idea.
last year with so many new faces.
That's it. I don't think they know. But, we talked so much about the new quarterback, and, you compare it to like the Vikings with J.J. McCarthy coming in and all the infrastructure they're surrounding him with. Well, with Drake, it's basically, and this is Burnsy's favorite thing, 5 new starters, even though 2 of the starters are back, but they're in different positions. But you have at those 5 line positions, it's going to have a new starter. And you have 2 new starting wide receivers. So it's not like you're putting in a new quarterback surrounded by a bunch of known commodities. You're putting in a new quarterback with a bunch of and as I wrote in the columns, like, unknown doesn't mean bad. It just means unknown. Like, they may be better. It doesn't mean worse. It just, we don't know yet how they're going to perform. So that's to me, the true fascinating thing is, like, we don't know much about the talent surrounding Drake either, other than, Darius Taylor. We know he's really good.
You're replacing 80% of your receiver production. Darius Taylor, he was able to stay healthy for 12 consecutive games. Can he do it again? Replacing your best corner, your best linebacker, your best pass rusher. Like, I know that we all have opinions on what it'll look like and who those guys will be, but until you get out there on Thursday night or Saturday morning, whatever it is, like, we're all going to have questions, which makes this such an interesting year for Minnesota within the Big Ten.
Yeah, it was fun I had never really talked to Drake other than saying hi, like in a hallway. But it was, you hit it, Burnsy, 19. And he sits down, and Grimmer and I mean, people can listen to it, and I'll plug it, not because, but that was because of him, right? I mean, he had, talking about, the golf background and not even really knowing if he wanted to play football, to then being all in on football, then hurting himself in basketball. He's got to relearn to walk. He reminded me of Max and other quarterbacks in that his level of detail about everything and being able to explain it, like his recall about, and then I talked to my doctor about this, and he was great, and he told me it was like a rubber band and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. Like, I can see why the intangible part of it, I can see why they are really high on this guy and why they're comfortable. Just think about how rare this is in 2025. They're comfortable handing over everything to a redshirt freshman, basically. When in 2025, including them, you can go find a experienced quarterback that wants a shot, whether you're going a level down or it's a Big Ten backup, or, there's plenty of opportunity to put an older guy in there, right? And they're comfortable, throwing it to a guy who just got here basically a year and a half ago, and we'll see. We'll see what happens.
That's the thing is, like, you could do that every year, but he's got to get experience at some point. And if you think he's super talented, which they did, it's like, if you're right, man, now you got, assuming everything stays and all that, you have a number of years with him versus just year after year trying to find a veteran guy that you're not always going to hit on a Max Brosmer. You're going to be wrong sometimes,
Right.
And so, but yeah, I mean, if he can process, much like what Max did, we know you see the physical part of it. Everybody can see that. It's just, as you say, it's like when it's third and long, when he's facing blitzes, all those things. How's he going to react? And so, but I think I trust Greg Harbaugh and PJ on what they're saying about him and their evaluation. I'm just curious to see how's that offensive line going to come together.
Yeah, it's a big question.
When you have 5 new guys, not new guys, but new to the position, or we hear all the time they got to gel, they got to have chemistry, they know how to pass things off and make calls and checks. I mean,
between the offensive line and I'll continue to say the pass catchers. I mean, you're replacing Daniel Jackson, Elijah Spencer, even Marcus Major was 5th on the team in catches. Like, you're replacing a lot of guys from last year. And I think in the non-conference between the brand new quarterback and the brand new pass catchers and the brand new offensive line, this thing's not going to look great. Now, will that translate to more or less wins? I think we all can go back to that 2019 season and say, if you were to have told us at all that non-conference, that was going to be a 10-11 win team, we all would have laughed you off.
Yeah. Right.
But they got a lot of things they got to work through in September.
I get this question a lot from people I see. You think PJ's still going to throw the ball a lot? I'm curious to see their approach. Early on, probably not to the degree that we, throwing it. I think they averaged 31 passes a game for the season last year. I don't think we're going to see that, but I'm kind of curious just to see what Greg and PJ come up with in terms of their philosophy.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's also going to be they stunk at running. They were horrible at running the ball last year.
Right.
Now, that's probably harsh. I will say they were horribly inconsistent at running the football from game to game, quarter to quarter, and they want to be able to run the football, especially with guys like A.J. Turner to complement Darius Taylor and Cam Davis, among others. Like, if they take a step forward in terms of run game consistency, well, then just in turn, you're going to throw the ball less. But can they have, and I'm going to do my best Tennessee accent with this, a modern offense? Mm-hmm. I think that it'll be a kind of a mix of what it's been, especially as you try to, as the Vikings are going to do with J.J. McCarthy. You don't want to have a guy come in and chuck it around, in my opinion, especially in this type of offense, which is still a 2 tight end offense, more or less.
Well, I liked what he said with us about, he says he's probably a little bit more of a risk taker than Max was. And he also said, coming in and learning an offense like this, he said, in high school, we were straight air raid. We just chucked it all over the place. It's just like that's what we did. He's like, so you got to figure, I'd be stunned if a guy who comes with that background, who clearly wants to throw it around, would come here and be, would have had discussions of, oh yeah, you just want me to hand it off to those running backs 50 times a game, like a Mitch Leidner did, or even like a Tanner had to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've talked about it a lot, Chip. What you talked to PJ about at Camp Randall last year, how he kind of changed and obviously trusted him. And Burnsy, you did a great job at the bowl game of talking to Max about Drake. I just think there was a lot of grooming going on, and I think all of it comes together, and it's not going to be it's going to be closer to the Brosmer style, I think, than it would be the Tanner or Leidner style, if that makes sense, which I think is fun. I think people should be excited about it.
Yeah. Again, the offensive coordinator in Greg Harbaugh does not want to be like his predecessor in Kirk Schrock in that regard. I think you saw more last year of what he wants this offense to become. But also, Harbaugh has to learn with this brand new offense, what are they good at? I think he's had 7 months of data, but with all the different faces that we've talked about, he's going to, you'd hope, tailor the offense to whatever their strength is and try to hide the weakness. And I think he's going to learn a lot, just like we all will in that non-conference, about what is this team or what is this offense actually good at, and then adjust from there.
I'm paranoid, by the way, about the Buffalo game. They're like second in the MAC projections, the preseason projections.
They're a quality MAC team. I think they're a lot more like, I I don't want to say Bowling Green in that season, but more like, remember the Miami of Ohio game where it was
Yes.
Chip's favorite Mac hip and hammer, just catching touchdowns to make it close? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm totally paranoid about that game because we'll see. Because last year, they did not play well. They were so sloppy in the opener.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. By the way, Burnsy, one quick aside on Drake Lindsey before we talk about the Kings of the North podcast preseason poll with Big Ten Media Day on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Do you plan on using the plate and food analogy for Drake Lindsey that you did with Coy Parrish last year? Or are you going to think of something? Are you going to mix it up this year when it comes to a young player and what he's able to eat and how much he's able to eat? And should they give him more to eat because he's already eaten so much? What's your strategy on this? I think it's a good time to think about that.
Well, one of the things I like to talk about with Drake is duck hunting because he grew up in Arkansas. He was a big duck hunter. So I think I might say something along the lines of, we're going to hand him the 20 gauge shotgun here early on. And if he shoots that well, we're going to upgrade to 12 gauge and we're going to continue to go from there. But I'll change my best with a Necton mentality just for you.
So the 20 gauge is less advanced than the 12 gauge? I would think that'd be opposite. What do the gauges represent?
I'm not going to get super into the idiosyncrasies of shotguns.
Well, you got to. This is not everybody's a duck hunter, Burnsy. Not everybody's a duck hunter. You got to be relatable. You got to make it digestible for those of us.
We're going to have them shoot the 20 gauge early, which is we'll say less kickback than to say a 12 gauge. And if you can handle that and shoot consistently, then we can upgrade to the 12 gauge and have maybe a little bit more BBs or slugs or whatever you want to kind of quantify this as. But I kind of like my plate analogy, even though I know Chip doesn't.
Oh, we liked it. It's just we were overwhelmed with it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like Golden Corral. It was just
variety is the spice of life. If I've heard Chip Scoggins say that once, I've heard it 20 times. So I'll work on it.
It was Old Country Buffet for those of us that remember that. It was Golden Corral.
To you.
I love Golden Corral.
Golden Corral was the best meal that Grim and I had in Las Cruces, New Mexico, when Jerry.
Aggie Vision, baby.
When we went out to Las Cruces to take on New Mexico State with the Fighting Jerry Kills, we had a nice lunch at Golden Corral in Las Cruces. Also had a horrific dinner at a place called Farley's that Daryl Thompson, who never says a bad thing about anybody, still talks about how bad it was across the street from our hotel. So we cut our losses, and you know how we don't like to do chains on the road, Burnsy. We like to sample the local flavor as much as we can. Farley's was an L, so we went to the old standby Golden Corral in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and I still remember it 11 years later or 10 years later, whenever it was. All right, Big Ten Media Poll. It used to be, Chip's old enough to remember the Cleveland Plain Dealer Poll. Everybody,
took part in it.
Of course he did. Everybody loved the Cleveland Plain Dealer Poll. Well, now some Columbus-based guys, the Kings of the North podcast, they are basically have taken that mantle, right, in sampling local media members from all over. I don't know, Burnsy, do you vote in this one, or does
I did. I voted in this one. Did either one of you two?
No. Nobody asked me to do anything, which is fine. I'm good. I do enough. I don't need it. Unlike Coy Parrish and Drake Lindsey, I don't need anything more on my plate. My plate's full.
Gotcha.
But the Kings of the North, 54 voters who cover the Big Ten and National, 1 through 18 predicted order of finish. And Penn State, the Fighting James Franklins, get the top spot. It's number 1, Penn State. We'll give you the top 4 first. Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and Brett Bielema's Illinois Fighting Illini, a very trendy team coming off a good season a year ago that, by the way, included the loss to the Gophers in Champaign. But the top 4, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and Illinois. Any surprises there, fellas?
I'd say I'd put Penn State 1 in mine. I think this is a huge year for James Franklin with the amount of talent that they have coming back, both player, even personnel-wise, with Andy Kotelicki, Chip's favorite Litchfield native. Yeah. Not going to West Virginia, among others that he was rumored for. So you get the offensive coordinator returning with Drew Aller. I think this, if there was ever a year for James Franklin to finally take the next step, this is it. And the other thing I'm pleasantly surprised about is Illinois being 4th. I had them 4th in mine. I'm glad to see that at least the Big Ten media is recognizing everything that they have coming back and what they built upon. And I've said this once, I've said it 100 times. I think we're going to look back at the PJ Fleck tenure whenever that comes to an end and say that win in Champaign against that Illinois team, which Minnesota was the only team to defeat Illinois in Champaign last season, was one of the better wins that they've had.
Yep.
So I think once you kind of get past 4, 5, 6, it gets very much discombobulated. But I will say this, I'm a little surprised that Wisconsin is as high as they are. Now they're right next to the Gophers at 11, 12 there, because that schedule is just so daunting. And with the amount of changes that Wisconsin has had to go through personnel wise, player wise, I don't know about that ranking for me. I had Wisconsin lower because of that, but go ahead, Chip.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you do this poll. I remember when I was on the beat, the reason why the Cleveland poll started, because when we go to Big Ten Media Days, the Big Ten would only release the top 3 teams.
That's
poll.
right. That's right. What are we doing?
They didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, so it's like, I can't remember who it was at Cleveland said, I think there was only like 12 of us at the first year, 15. It's like, send us your poll, and we're going to release it, and then you get the full thing. I agree on Penn State. I just think with everything they have coming back with their quarterback, and it'll be interesting to see how James Franklin kind of handles this pressure. This is a big year for them to break through and to see if they can really be that team that can win the big game and get to, win the Big Ten, or, maybe contend for the national title. Agree on Illinois. I've said it again many times. I think Brett Bielema is a really good coach. Whatever happened at Arkansas, I don't know. Maybe it's a bad fit. Sometimes fits really matter. He's a Big Ten guy. He's a good coach. I thought when they hired him, that was a great hire. I thought he would win there because of his style of football. And so I agree with you, Burnsy. And I also think I agree with you on Wisconsin. I don't know that the writers are really digging in on everybody's schedule to see how tough it is. Wisconsin's schedule is absolutely brutal. It's,
they have everybody.
They have everybody. Yeah.
They have everybody. And
they get 2 games at the beginning, and then it's all right on the road to Roll Tide, and then essentially all the way to that Minnesota game at the end of it. Godspeed.
Yeah, it is a hard schedule. But I do think in general in these polls, really 6 to 13 or 14.
Agree.
Yeah,
put them in a hat and draw them out. It's
especially now. Nobody knows. Nobody knows anything about any of these teams.
They're going to be separated by 2 games. I guarantee at the end of the season, you look at that schedule or you look at the standings, 6 through 12, 6 through 14, it's going to be separated by 2 games. So just do you win those close games, those 50-50 toss-up games? So I think the by and large, at least the top of the writers or voters, whoever did it, got it pretty right.
So the question I have for you guys is the 2, I would say, hype teams, the teams that have some steam here in the offseason, are number 1, the team that no one wins the offseason, like the Nebraska Cornhuskers, who are 8th, which is above Iowa.
Yep.
And then the USC Trojans, which they're 7th in this poll. Now, to Chip's point, I don't really care. It's semantics, 6 through 12, 6 through 13, whatever you want it to be. But to me, the interesting part is there's parts of the Big Ten media landscape, which, as we know now, is coast to coast, that have them above Iowa. Now, I understand Iowa is very, I would say, boring at this aspect because all they do is win 7, 8, 9 games every year. But which one of those 2 teams in your minds, between USC and Nebraska, do you have more faith in here for 2025? Because they're pitted right next to each other.
You want to think about it, Chip? Because I have my answer.
Yes. Go ahead.
I have more faith in Matt Rule than I do Lincoln Riley. And I think they have a good quarterback. And I haven't, maybe on the flight to Vegas, I'll do a deep dive on all the schedules. I've kind of only looked at the traditional Big Ten West and everything. I'll see. I'm a big Matt Rule believer. Obviously, I love poking fun at what you just said, Burnsy, that nobody if we could bet in Vegas on the much too early preseason top 25, Nebraska settling in at 21st every year, I would do it because that's been, as long as I've been on the sidelines, that's been the bit.
Right.
However, I'm a big Matt Rule fan, like big Matt Rule fan. Like I do think he knows what he's doing. And not that Lincoln Riley doesn't, but I think there's probably more pressure on Lincoln Riley. And so if I had to, I'd say 60-40 Nebraska over USC and who I have more faith in.
Yeah,
just because of coaching, I think, and probably quarterback.
I would say those two things too. I agree with you on Matt Rule. I mean, you look at what he's done at the college game. I don't care about what happened at the NFL. I mean, he's a good coach too. Like he knows what he's doing. Eventually, you're going to be right on the at some point. They're going to have a breakthrough, right?
Well, it's been like 20 years.
I know. At some point, we're all going to say, "See, I told you." 20 years later. But I do think, and Lincoln Riley, I think sometimes gets, there's always like little battles with that he wages, whether it's the media or whatever. I don't know. Now, Burns, you know this more than me. I assume their recruiting is good. They probably had finished high there because they are surrounded by talent, and it's a blue blood program. So I don't know who they have coming in, but I assume it's a lot of 4-star, 5-star kids probably.
And I think they have the number one recruiting classes for high school kids right now. So they've, again, talent is never the issue with USC.
Correct.
Again, I think I would lean USC over Nebraska just because, to Chip's point, I mean, how many years have we said that? To me, it's never been a talent issue at Nebraska. I think it's been a coaching issue. And again, I know there's a lot of expectations for Dylan Raiola with the new offensive coordinator who's going to fix him. And I think almost the fascinating part, if you look at it from the local angle here, is Minnesota has to play the number 2 and the number 3 team on the road, Ohio State and Oregon.
Yep.
But then they miss Penn State, who's at 1. You miss Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, USC, who are 4 through 7. You get Nebraska at home on a short week, who's 8. You have Iowa. Again, you miss a lot of the top teams in the conference in this regard, in terms of if this preseason projection is anywhere near accurate, which I think every Big 12, did you guys see that the Big 12 did not do a poll this year because of how wrong they were last year?
By the way, I don't hate that because it's every team's in flux and and what does it really mean? Like we're spending 10 minutes of it on a podcast. That's great.
I know.
It's fun to talk about your conference.
Yeah, it's fodder. It's fodder.
I would say, yeah. I mean, when I look at the Gopher schedule, I think it's very favorable because you look at their home schedule, for sure it's favorable. Now, if you're going to play your toughest games on the road, like Ohio State, you're probably going to pick them to lose whether they're home and road, right? Okay.
Right.
Oregon, same thing. So might as well play them on the road and have a favorable home schedule. So I think it's a favorable. The Gophers are 11th in that poll, I believe. I see.
Yep.
Yes.
I think that's probably appropriate, given the unknowns that we talked about previously with the quarterback, with all the other things. I think there's talent here. They have high-end talent. We know that with Coy and Darius and Anthony Smith. They have some headliners. But it's just so many unknowns that I think 11th is probably appropriate.
Good job. Hour and 2 minutes into the pod, and you just mentioned Coy Parrish. That's good restraint and discipline from you, Chip. We'll talk to him in Vegas. Last thing on this with Nebraska.
Yep.
Buckle up. I did just look at their schedule. Cincinnati at Arrowhead, Akron, Houston Christian, Michigan in Lincoln, Michigan State in Lincoln, at Maryland, and then here. Imagine the hype train for Nebraska. I mean, that's the opposite of Wisconsin's schedule, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that is as manageable the first 6-7 weeks. So, but just think about how quickly we are to jump on Nebraska if they look good those first 3 weeks and then pick off Michigan. Well, Michigan has questions, right? We don't know much about Michigan.
They might have a true freshman starter at quarterback.
Right. I mean, I know that were they 5th in this poll? I just clicked off of it. They're somewhere in there. Yeah. But that's, I think, more on brand recognition than anything. I haven't done the deep dive on them, but like that hype train is going to be out of control. You better make sure the Green Line station has enough room for the hype train as it pulls into Dinkytown that Friday night of MEA weekend here, because that could be something. But that might also be on paper their most challenging home game. If you think about it.
It reminds me of the night game. So even Minnesota schedule, we talked about it. You have Buffalo, Northwestern State, Cal, bye week to prepare for Rutgers at home. Then you have to go to Columbus before you get Purdue at home. Like, what are the chances that game's going to be 5-1 against 5-2, 6-1 Friday night on Fox? It kind of reminds me of the situation. Which year was it? Was it 2022? where Nebraska came in that essentially that kind of same scenario, and they were, what were they, 4-1, 5-0, and then Minnesota ran them out the building that night. It was a night game. I remember that.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it. I'm getting old, man. I'd have to think about it. I'd have to go back.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a great atmosphere for whatever it is.
Yeah, it should be good. We'll talk about playoff stuff next week because we'll let the Big Ten kind of talk for the first time, really. They've been taking slings and arrows, right, from the SEC basically the last month. Greg Sankey has said a lot. Tony Petitti, not as much. I know he's had some things to say. When we talked a couple of weeks ago, or last pod probably, about these two needing to be the two to figure out the playoff, and right now they have very differing ideas. That's going to be probably the biggest topic of Vegas, right, Burnsy, is the Big Ten's stance on the playoff model, and if these two who are in charge of it, how it's written in terms of the next expansion, can figure out something for 2026, or if we go 12 for a couple of years until they can figure it out. But probably smart to table that until we get some Big Ten reaction and then talk about it next week. What do we think?
I think so. Or just even getting any Tony Petitti comments on the record, which we'll have to go on because he's been very quiet compared to Chip's favorite Greg Sankey of the SEC there. But getting his reaction and kind of just seeing how all that plays out. Now, I'll tell you, Chip, how much would you pay? Because you know that with us all being in Vegas, or the entire Big Ten, you know that there's going to be some Big Ten football coach poker games going on somewhere.
Yeah.
In a back room at Caesar's Palace or wherever they choose. How much would you pay to be in the room to watch PJ Fleck try to bluff, say, Lincoln Riley on the river to see what these guys all got in store? I'm sure there'll be a couple stogies in the room, a couple. I know the bourbon's going to be flowing. How much would you pay to be in that room?
I would love to be in there, but two things. When does the commissioner? What day is he talking? Wednesday or Thursday?
I would imagine he goes.
I didn't even look.
So he goes first day?
He should. Yeah.
I didn't even look.
But do the coaches all stay? That's the thing. Like when I was on the beat, I hate to be the old guy when I was on the beat, but all the coaches and all the players were there for the same time. Now do they come and go, or is there much overlap?
Well, usually, yes, in Indy. With Vegas and the fact that I think a lot of coaches are going to have +1s more than they might have in Indy.
Longer. Yeah.
They might be a lot of them used to fly day in, especially the centrally located ones, day in, day out. Like we're getting on the plane at 6 and we're coming back at 8. Chicago, they would stick around. Remember, PJ took them all to Hamilton the one time. I think I think everybody does it differently depending on when they start camp, all of those things. But with Vegas, I would imagine
they're staying.
I would imagine. I would imagine. Yeah. I think the Flex were just in Vegas like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So
last getaway before camp, so might as well enjoy it.
That will be, though, Burns, it's going to be some Big Ten social media person that's popping around all the podiums and asking who the best poker player would be with all the coaches, which is fine. I love the cliched content. I love all of it. We don't need to worry about the 3 technique and the 4 technique and the 5 technique and the 12 gauge or the 20 gauge. We don't need to worry about any of that on July 22nd, 3rd, and 4th. All right, there's plenty of time for the deep dives on all of that. Well, good to see you guys. Good job on the mic, Chip.
Thank you.
Burnsy, when are you going to Vegas? What's your itinerary?
I leave what day is it today? Monday. I leave tomorrow around noon. I think I get in around 4. We might be on the same Delta flight.
Well, I think I'm 250, so I think you might be on the flight before me. I think the Fox 9 crew is going to be
straight from the airport to the steak joint that we're all meeting up at, or what?
Pretty much, yeah. What else am I going to do?
You've already texted me for different strategies on the Baccarat table. I'm not joking about that, people. My man loves himself some Baccarat.
You will be shocked at the lack of gambling that I do.
I'm trying to figure of the folks I know from the Minnesota media market here going to Vegas, which one of them am I going to hear stories about at like 3 a.m, getting back to the room a little bit late? And
me? No.
Well, I'm trying to figure which of us. I know there's not a ton of us, but I'll be very curious to see or hear.
Do you want my Kings of the North Power podcast on this?
I think the listeners would love it.
Number 1, Randy Johnson.
Yeah.
Number 2
makes sense.
Greeter?
No, Greeter. Mrs. Greeter's coming. Speaking of wives, so he's having a night, which is cool. I think she's got because he's there for a couple of days. So they're not joining us. They're not joining us. I guess I'd have to put
Gaardsy
myself
too.
to
Gaardsy too. Yeah.
because I don't know what to do with Daryl Thompson. I'm not sure what to do with Daryl.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Wait.
We call it
Grimmer's got to be high up there now, right?
No, Grimmer doesn't do anything crazy. Grimmer,
Especially
and
since
I don't
he
even
goes out early and comes home late.
Yeah, I don't really do anything crazy either at my advanced age. But if you were to find somebody like watching a game in a sports book at like 2:30 in the morning, that would be me, because I don't do a lot. Like I'm despite my reputation, I'm not like looking to make Hangover 4 this week.
Well, I know
Vegas.
you've been talking to me about the money line between the Dodgers and the Twins here coming up.
Yeah, like
How
I'm
much
more
money
like
can you put on the Dodgers?
I like to just kind of sit and chill and enjoy the vibe more and enjoy the food. I like Vegas for like just the vibe, the food, usually the weather. I mean, it's going to be 110 degrees, so that's going to be an L. Yeah, I just like all of that. My crazy days are behind me. Now, if you want to go like 2008, 2009 Vegas, we could have a conversation. But yeah, I think it's kind of a boring crew, honestly. That's why we got a nice, responsible 6:30 dinner reservation. It'll be 8:30 Central Time. Yeah, because we got to get back to bed and I assume go to work early in the morning. So we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. But I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of food, you've got a great opportunity this week to go to Jack's Cafe and get 20% off your food bill. Just mention Parent Spare on the phone or Parent Spare promo when you make your online reservation. Bill and Jack's hooking up the Parent Spare audience. So we're taping this on a Monday. It will be released on a Monday. You've got plenty of time the rest of the week to get to and weekend to get to Jack's Cafe. It's right below us there, jaxcafe.com. Mention Parent Spare promo. Get 20% off your food bill. Great to see you guys. Burnsy, we will see you in Vegas, and we'll probably talk next week, right, on the Parent Spare pod.
Let's do it.